Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Median User, the human's guide to the age of AI. In this episode, we're going to be covering something that is probably close to a lot of our hearts, and that is ChatGPT. But more so, how can we get the most out of it? Now, a lot of us use ChatGPT in our daily lives, and I know that me and AK definitely do, and we know a lot of other people who do as well. But people always seem to misunderstand the extent to which ChatGPT can actually help them and how they can really make the most out of the platform.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible unlock to get good with the product of ChatGPT, all the features that it has, things like memory, custom instructions, voice mode. I swear by this shortcut on the Mac option space that you can set up with it, because what that lets me do is use it anywhere, anytime, one click away. And so these are the things that for me actually make a huge difference in my use of AI. And that took me from a maybe once a day, a few times a week kind of user to a 30 times a day type, chat GPT user. But a lot of the conversation online, and public discourse, the news centers more around the models than the product features to use them. And I think it's, of course, important to know which model you're using, what it's good at, and we'll cover that in a second. But I find it actually personally the feature set matters more to me than the models. That's why I don't end up switching from ChatGPT to Claude or Grok or Gemini or whichever the latest hottest model is of the day. If it doesn't have like the full feature set, the shortcuts that I'm used to, I'm not going to make the switch unless it's a very specific purpose.
So let me ask you something. As a regular user of ChatGPT or someone who might just be using it as a daily driver, I get questions answered. Does it really matter that much which model that person is using? Or does it matter more how that person uses whichever model is the default setting for them?
Yeah, I think it matters a lot more how they use it. So let's think about just ChatGPT. If you're seeing that model selection, kind of prompt widget, and you're getting a little overwhelmed, confused, because I think right now it has something like 8 or 9, and they've acknowledged it's an issue. They're weirdly named. It's hard to know which one does what. But to simplify all of it down, and this is how I use it, I think it's how it makes sense for most people. You can effectively think of just two models that you need. GPT 4o is the daily driver for that you just mentioned. For me, that means things like recipes, meal planning, quick questions, historical answers, search something, proofread this, quick edit that, write this email. Anything fast where I also don't want to wait for a better answer. I just want a good enough answer, and the task is not that complicated. GPT 4o, it's not the latest, most advanced model, but they still make little incremental updates to it. So I find it does an amazing job at most things. And it has that full feature set with voice mode, web search, deep research, and so on. Then the second model that you need to care about, O3. Now, this is the latest reasoning model from OpenAI. It's available, I believe, in limited on the free plan. Then you get like a good use on the pro plan, and then there's the plus plan and the pro plan. So you get it in almost all cases. And what's amazing about O3 is it's really good at planning, strategizing, math, science, technology, engineering type questions, financial planning, data analysis, or anything that requires like what would be considered reasoning, harder thinking. And it takes a little longer to get its answer. So if it's, let's say, a medium complexity question, it might take 30 seconds. If it's a harder question, it might take a minute or two to go through its reasoning loops. But it's going to really improve that quality of results. It's going to make a lot fewer typos or math mistakes. So it can be as simple as that for everyone, for myself included. GPT 4o, daily driver. O3 is the thinker.
So just to branch off a little bit, you mentioned reasoning, and obviously a lot of the, I guess, hype around AI is because it can reason like a human. Well, that's the goal, right? When we get to AGI, it can think for itself. Now, there was some news fairly recently around how someone had debunked the reasoning side of ChatGPT, I believe, or was it something else? But as someone basically debunked the reasoning behind a model, how do you think that affects our use? Does it mean that we actually get worse answers than we think, or is it not really affecting on our experience using these platforms?
I mean, entering the realm of philosophy here of what is reasoning really, and are we ourselves truly reasoning, or are we also just pattern matching? I'm not gonna go deep into that, but I'll say for me,
Broke the
eh,
fourth wall, man.
yeah.
How am I meant to think for the rest of the day knowing that my thoughts aren't mine?
I mean, I watch my kids grow up doing a lot of pattern matching, and that seems to be the dominant way they think. So I wouldn't be surprised if it goes all the way all the
To
way
be honest,
up.
I mean, I think about it a lot. Like, what is intelligence? And it comes
Yeah.
to like in a general sense. And we're not talking about like, if you're smart at art or whatever. But I think most of it boils down to pattern matching, right? It's like you have this context and you understand certain things. Can we extrapolate that pattern recognition to other things? And that makes you seem smart. Like the smartest people I know wouldn't call themselves smart. I think they would probably just say, look, we have like fairly good common sense and we know how to pattern match. And I think it makes sense, right? If the models are literally just pattern matching and calling it reasoning, I don't think it's that far of a stretch.
Yeah, I think there are some good definitions of what like true reasoning outside of pattern matching is and what a good reasoning problem can look like. But also the study that you're talking about that debunked that these models reason, it was a bit of a joke study, but I think people latched onto it because they want to negate what's happening. You know, they want to say, "Oh no, no, never mind. This isn't really as far as you think it is." And for me, I don't really care one way or another. What I care about is this useful for me? Can it do a data analysis task, which I myself only loosely know how to do and would have taken me an hour to do? Yes. And I can verify the results in other ways. Like if it does the data analysis and I can just check that whatever it came up with, if I just check a few of the data points, I see, yeah, okay, it looks pretty correct to me. You know, I've done enough of work with these reasoning models that I find like, wow, they're really good. They help me. They get my work done faster. They help me do things that I'm not so good at doing. I don't care what's like the philosophy underneath that surface. You know, if it helps, it helps.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right way to look at it, right? You can't let the thinking behind why this might or might not work affect you actually using the thing and getting the most value out of it as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like that, I guess that's a good segue, right? So we have these two models. You have the GPT-4 daily driver that you might use. You have another model which might be good for certain tasks. But at the end of the day, how are we meant to make the most out of each one? Are there any ways that we're meant to prompt these models or speak to them, or any features that we might be missing that are actually leaving money on the table per se in terms of improving our productivity or opening insights that we might not have had before? What are your, starting with the prompting side, your kind of prompting hacks for anyone who's looking to make the most out of ChatGPT?
Yeah. Prompting is this fun game that you build an intuition for. And most of the time, I think you don't need to think about it too hard. You can just say whatever you would say in pretty natural language. But the more complex the problem, the longer the output. If you're trying to come up with, for example, like a proposal to a major client, you definitely want to be writing a very good prompt with all of the context the model needs, you know, formatted in a particular way. So I'd say, as a general principle, it's learning to be very specific about your request, the content, your output format, your goals, and what you don't want it to do. If you think about it like talking to an intern who only has a loose grasp of the area you're interested in, the more specific you can be with your intern, the better they're going to perform. And so I think that's like just principle number one. The harder the job is, the more specific you have to be. And I do a lot of context dumping. And this is also where ChatGPT's memory feature can come handy because over time it gets to know things about me, like where I live, where I work, my role at work, the team dynamics at work. In my family, it's like, you know, my wife's allergies and my kids' dietary needs, or the kind of food that I like to eat, like high protein, generally pretty low calorie. And so these types of things, it accrues over time so that that context is building without me needing to put it in every single prompt. So then I can be a little looser. I can just say, hey, working on this thing for work, and here's what I need next. And I know it has enough to go on. But if you're new to, if you're new to using ChatGPT and you haven't given it all that context yet, I would spell it out like, here's my role, here's my team, here's what the company does, here's our website, here's a bunch of stuff to help you do the best job you can.
Yeah, you mentioned two things there that are pretty interesting. I think the first one I want to talk about is negative prompting, which you said, obviously, tell it what you want it to do and also tell it what you don't want it to do. Now, I think a lot of people, rightly say they don't understand how the model thinks. And no one's expecting you to understand how it picks out information from its huge cloud of brains and provides you an answer. Like, it's a very complicated thing. But what you can do to help yourself get an answer that is most aligned with what you're looking for is to really give it negative guidelines. So, for example, if I was to write a blog about the best dog food, right? It doesn't know if I'm a vet or I'm a dog chef or whatever it might be. But if you give it guidelines and say, hey, look, I'm looking for an SEO focused blog. I want to target these certain customers. I don't want to target these certain customers, etc. Then you're providing not only a positive reinforcement, but a negative reinforcement for it to stay clear of certain things. And that will align it more with what you want from your end output. I think that's a very important thing to do, is to affirm things with it, right? Affirm what you're really looking for and affirm what you're really not looking for. And when it comes to the memory, one thing that I found really helpful recently is that if I have a specific task, for example, in my ChatGPT UI, I have multiple tasks and chats open for different things. For example, creating YouTube video scripts. Nowadays, I don't have to tell it we're creating a YouTube video script. I've just said, hey, look, here's an outline, create the video script. And it has all the context from our past scripts to work on and to align that script with the ones previous. But one thing that I found helpful is if you're going to create like a new chat for a new task, the first line of whatever you write in that chat should say, hey, look, this is a chat for, and then insert task. So that way it always has a strict context that, okay, whatever we're doing in this chat should be aligned with this. Because sometimes as you get much further down the line and there's a lot of context, sometimes it loses core things. That's what you're looking for in the chat and might not fully understand the true nature of that chat. And they might just kind of think you're asking for random things. So if you can align off the bat and say, hey, look, in this chat, we're going to be focusing on doing X, Y, Z, then you can just provide bits of context and it already has the overarching theme of what this chat is about to create outputs that are more aligned with what you're looking for anyway. So again, nowadays in my YouTube video scripting, I don't have to say, hey, this is meant to be a YouTube script. I just say, look, hey, here's some information. Okay, great. YouTube video script is done. And it's very, very simple. So one thing that this also leads on to is leading the model. And what I mean by this is, let's say I'm writing an article or I'm writing the script for a YouTube video. And I'm unsure, based on the context of the video, that ChatGPT will get it right the first time, maybe because there's a lot of information out there, maybe because there's not a lot of information out there on this certain topic. What I might do is lead it to action something else beforehand. For example, hey, can you please write a blog on the best food to make for a dog in Siberia? Okay, can you please research XYZ different articles or XYZ different search queries before you go ahead and write the article? And normally I will actually say, before you write anything, show me your research so that I can vet it. So then you're leading the model just like with an intern that you have. You're just making sure that it's in line with, again, the output that you're looking for versus having the model jump ahead and just do something that you don't really want. And I've had this many times where it's like, hey, we want to do this task. And you just tell it what task you want to do. And then suddenly, I'm sure AK, you've had the same, it just does it. And you're like, no, wait, we haven't started yet. Just let me know you understand. And then we can move ahead. So leading the model and really making sure that it understands when to a task or what task if you really want it to execute in that moment is really, really important. It will save you a ton of time and many a headache when you're using these platforms.
Yeah, I have such a interesting example of having done this recently. I was working on, appropriately enough, an LLM evaluation setup for a healthcare scribe feature that we use in our platform. So the feature itself is recording encounters with patients and doctors and then coming up with the chart notes for the doctor afterwards. And so it takes a good bit of intelligence that we need to also be very accurate on, like no room for error, obviously in medical context. And so we're setting up an LLM evaluation. So you have one LLM evaluating the output of the actual feature LLM. And in order to do that, I needed to learn a lot about this general topic of LLM evaluation. And so I started reading and finding all these big, like deep, well-researched articles, like 10-page articles, full breakdowns of how to do this well today. And it's an evolving topic. It's probably changing every week. And there's very much a feeling for me of just overwhelm with the amount of information I had to process to come up with a good plan. And so then what I did is I found like the top 2 to 3 articles, long, well-researched articles, fed it into ChatGPT and said, read these articles, and knowing the goal of like what I'm trying to do here at work, come up with the plan that I can share with my engineering team. And it was just an incredible result, because then you're getting a human written, well-researched, like, up-to-date article being fed into ChatGPT as its input. Then I read the article too, but I don't then need to like do all the mental processing of how does that translate to us? Which tool does that mean we need to use? It's just like processing all of that, coming up with, okay, in your case, use this tool, use that thing. This is what your engineers need to know. This is what you need to know. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I pass it to them. I do this thing a lot where I don't say that this was an AI generated output, just to kind of see like, does this feel right? And they're like, yeah, this looks great. Like, we'll get started. I was like, hey, just so you know, like, this was ChatGPT generated. They're like, oh, cool. Like, it's good, So yeah, priming it with these things. And I find that topic of priming is generally how to get great results. So feeding it articles, feeding it research is one way. But have you ever played much with role, like assignment, or like telling it you are a world-class marketer who's an expert at writing blog posts about dogs, and then starting the rest of your task from there?
Yeah, I used to do that early days when it seemed to find it hard to find the context to which I was asking for a task. And so I would provide it a role so we would know, okay, based on all this trillions of parameters of information I have, I should only listen to those pertaining to this task or this role. So I would say, hey, look, you are a creative writer, or you are an SEO specialist who's very well versed in helping companies rank for Google search terms. And then I would go ahead and write my prompt. I don't think I ever did it in a sense of, hey, you are a inside industry professional, just because maybe like the nuance of where I work, like a professional expert in blockchain and crypto, like there's not very many like real experts in this technology. And a lot of people who say they are just absolutely full of shit. No offense, sorry for swearing, excuse my French, whatever. Um, and so like every time I did, because I did try it at the beginning, and I was like, this is utterly rubbish. Like, this is not any sort of information I would want to have in an article. So I would just like fact check it afterwards. But the role playing in the sense of, hey, you are a writer, or you are XYZ, or you are very good at insert whatever you're looking for, that did help a lot. Now, I haven't used it as much. I just haven't felt like I had to. And I think obviously with what we mentioned before around the ChatGPT, like the platform understanding and having memory of our previous history, it's, I sound like I'm dating it. But just having its memory, like, you know, being full of what we've already done,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier. It already has the context. It doesn't need to really dig too deep to understand what I'm looking for, because it has so much already.
So there's one technique that I've recently come up with that I find to be like the next gen version of this role prompting. And that's something I'm calling like the expert insights primer prompt. And it's a simple thing. I kind of almost discovered it by accident, but it's so powerful for getting a better result when you need it to think from an expert's lens on a specific topic. Especially if you're not an expert in that topic, it's hard for you to prompt it as if you were the expert. And for me, for example, like product design, I can describe exactly what I'm looking for, use the words that help clue it into what kind of analysis I'm trying to get or what kind of design ideation I'm trying to get. But if I was to try to, say, write a marketing blog post, I wouldn't know how to write that prompt in a way that it's going to create a great result. I would just be like, make it really good. You're an expert, but I don't know what good looks like. I don't know how to describe good. And so one thing I've come up with is that I first start the conversation, the chat with, what does every great marketer know about what they do that is not obvious to an outsider? And you can fill in whatever job title or whatever sort of action expert instead of marketer there. So what does every great consultant know? What does every great chef know? What does every great real estate agent know about what they do that is not obvious to an outsider? And then what this prompt does is ChatGPT usually returns a list of about 8 to 10 really expert insights from that person's role. And so the first time I used this was for a consultant. I was interested in doing some AI consulting. I spoke to a friend of mine who's been a consultant his whole career at some of the major companies. And so I spent like an hour on the phone with him, just getting his, full like 10 years of experience distilled into 1 hour. What is the real heart of consulting? And there was insights in there I would have never thought of. Things like, 50% of the job is you're actually just giving validation to the client to do what they want to do anyway. Like if they need to lay off a team or they need to restructure the company, they might have already had those ideas, but they didn't want to be the one responsible for them. And if they say, McKinsey told me to do it, that's actually what they're paying for. It's not the idea, it's the validation. And I was like, that's crazy. Like they really just pay you that much just to have someone to blame, basically. And so after this conversation, I wondered, would ChatGPT have come up with the same insights? And so I used this prompt for the first time. What does every great consultant know about what they do that is not obvious to an outsider? And it was like almost all of the same insights that my friend gave me from 10 years of work. And it was just an amazing list. And I was like, wow, like this is really a great way to get it to think as an expert from this area. And then where I took this one step further, that's been amazing, is if you start the chat with that question, you don't even care about the answer. Anything you want to do afterwards, write a proposal, edit this email, draft this, change that, anything you want to do from there, it'll now do it with those expert insights, like clued in, primed for that expertise. And I think it works so much better than if you just say, write this proposal as if like you are an amazing consultant. It doesn't do the same thing. It doesn't come out. But if you first sort of ask it for those specific insights, it writes it with those. It's incredible from there. Yeah.
It's really weird, like it's almost like you've told it to go to the library and pick out a book. And then once it's read the book, it can never do anything without information from that book. And I think that's a nice way to think about how you talk to any model, is that the way that the information is stored and structured doesn't have to be understood in a deep level by the end user. But if you just think about it like a huge library of information, and whatever prompts you give it, it's going to go and find the right book on that prompt and read it. And then it will use that book to continually iterate on whatever you're going to provide it next. So as I mentioned, if you're doing, again, YouTube video scripts, if I primed my message just by saying, hey, we're creating a YouTube video script, well, it's just going to go and find the most basic book or piece of information on how to create a YouTube video, and then it will create your output from that. But if I said it, what is the most non-obvious things that the top 100 YouTubers do in their videos, then it will go and look for information around that topic, which will be a lot deeper, a lot more precise, and something that, again, much more non-obvious and something that'll be likely higher quality.
Definitely.
And it will page that into every output it provides after that. So I think that's a nice way to look at it. It's like it has all the information, but you also need to guide it to help it pick out which information it should use for your outputs.
So there's one more technique to throw on top of that, and this is getting a little advanced, but some people might find it really useful, and that's meta prompting, which is when, if you need to write a prompt for something quite complicated, let's say it is that create a project proposal for this major client for this specific project. And the meta prompt in this case is, instead of asking for that directly, you ask for the prompt that you would then use with the model. So you say, hey, ChatGPT, I need the best possible prompt for creating a proposal for this major client for this. And so what this does, like, especially for non-experts who aren't using like AI every day, all day for work and everything. But if you're just sort of arriving at ChatGPT, you're not very good at prompting, or sometimes for me, it's like I just don't have the time to think of the best prompt with all of those guidelines we just shared. One thing that works really well is the primer prompt. So, what does every great job title know about what they do that is not obvious to an outsider? Followed by now using those insights you just came up with, write me the best possible prompt to create a project proposal for a consulting firm or for a client. And one thing that can really help you do is very quickly, and you don't have to read any of the answers. Your ultimate goal is the proposal. You don't need to read the steps along the way. But what you've done is you've kind of just made ChatGPT do the work for you of adding the context, being very specific, doing those do's and don'ts. It knows that at this point. It knows how to write a great prompt because the amount of information about prompting is now widely available on the internet. And so you're kind of like cheating through everything we just described without having to actually know how to do it yourself.
Yeah, you get like really good advice like that, and there's other ways of making the LLM do what you want by threatening it, which also works. So
Yeah.
pick your poison, really. Meta prompt or threaten, which so it's up to you.
Oh yeah, I mean emotional manipulation works really well.
You know, I think I was using Cursor to code something, and I'm basically I'm coding a game. It's just a game that me and my friends play, but it's like a pretty unknown game, and there's no online version for it. So I was trying to build it, and it was getting something wrong, and I was like, if you don't fix this now, I'm going to use something else. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they fixed it, and I was like, there's like no, there's no way this is real. Like, we've done this
Oh,
10
I've
times.
definitely
You
done
probably
this.
wasted so many of my credit, but only until I threaten you with the jumping ship are you going to fix it. By the way, that is actually a real way that you can prompt ChatGPT. If you threaten the model and say, hey, look, I don't like this output. If you do another bad output, I'm going to go away and use another model. It actually
Yeah,
should
it
provide
works
you,
so well.
uh,
Yeah.
a weirdly
Do,
good output.
do I need to get Claude or Gemini involved here? Come on, man. It works
Yeah, I
so
mean,
well.
next one, don't let me tell Sam about this. You know, get my boss involved.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you'd want.
Being encouraging also works. I think there's actually some hard research to show that being very encouraging, like being like you're really great. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Being all kinds of like buttering it up seems to work. So you can go either way. You can either sweeten the prompt or go very threatening. And either way, I guess it just raises the stakes or mimics human behavior in some sense,
You got to
which
play
is
good cop and
fascinating.
bad cop. I mean, I would say thank
Yeah.
you to ChatGPT for many other reasons. I mean,
Oh my
ChatGPT,
god.
I love you if you can hear me through my Siri.
I love you, but if you don't get this right, I'm leaving you.
Yeah, exactly. Like dating, you know, want to keep them on their toes. That's also not dating advice. So yeah, but I think even with the positive affirmations, something that is nice and that can lean from that is actually asking it to ask you questions, which is something that a lot of people don't do. So, for example, if you have a more complicated task and you feel that, okay, this might be quite nuanced and specific and maybe a bit complicated, just ask it, hey, before we start anything, do you have any questions about this task for me? And it will ask you, and then you answer it, and then it will go ahead. And I found that really yields much better results.
Yep, definitely. I mean, it's so important for me that I put it in my custom instructions, which is one of those killer features that I think everyone needs to know about. For me, there's this sort of like holy trinity of special features I described at the beginning. It's custom instructions, memory, and the option space shortcut on Mac. I don't know what it is on Windows, but having those three things set up for me is like 10x my usage of ChatGPT and just my productivity with it overall. So, for those who don't know, I want to run through this really quickly because I think if you're not using this today, you absolutely need to be, no matter what you use ChatGPT for. So, custom instructions is a field in the settings where you can tell ChatGPT how you want it to behave, how you want it to answer, in general in every chat. And so for me, I started the sort of having the inspiration to do this just by following what people on Twitter were doing. I came across something that Eigenlayer on Twitter wrote a custom prompt, which is now called the Eigen prompt. And it is a really good starting point for anyone, I think. What it does is tell it things like be very terse, don't use many formalities, don't qualify your statements. If there's a policy being broken that you can't answer, be specific what policy is broken and why. However smart you're being right now, act as if you're 2 standard deviations smarter. Use millennial slang, not boomer slang. Throw in some Gen Z slang occasionally. It's these kind of things that just change the tone that makes by itself just a huge difference for me. And then what I've done is I've started to add in my own custom instructions on top of that. And one of them is like ask follow-up questions wherever appropriate. And that can be either follow-up questions because you need more context to answer my request as best you can, or a follow-up question that I could then use to ask you like where to go from here. So if we start by saying, hey, write me this email, or actually, sorry, let me say, tell me about how the Colosseum was built. And it might say, okay, here's a bunch of information. And then instead of me having to think about what to ask next, it could say, do you want to know more about the time that it was ransacked and then rebuilt? Or do you want to know more about the other buildings in Rome? Or do you want to know about the stone quarrying method they used? And so it kind of gives you a few directions to go on, whatever it is. And for me, that's now built into my custom instructions. So are you also a custom instructions fan like me? Because I could go on all day, but what's in yours?
There's one feature that I just love, and that's voice mode. I just sit there and talk to ChatGPT. It sounds ridiculous, but sometimes when I have a conundrum that I can't articulate very well in words, or I can't be typing because I'm doing something else, it's just so easy to click that feature and have a conversation with ChatGPT. The only thing I have to remember is telling it to write down what we're talking about, because sometimes it'll forget to do that. But it's just so easy. I can just say like, hey, look, I've got an issue. I'm trying to come up with a new offer. I'm not sure how to structure the pricing. Can we do some research to figure out what the best type of pricing model would be? Boom. I've said it in 15 seconds. I don't have to type any words. I just sit there and wait for an answer. And then I obviously ask it to write it down for me so I don't have to go ahead and remember it or recall it later. And I think it's just so powerful. Like, this is, I think, where the future of it all heads when you're thinking about wearable AI merch or accessories. For example, there's companies out there who are building this hardware. I forget their names. I should probably get them for the next one. Might be interesting to cover. But, stuff like earrings or headphones or necklaces where you're going to be talking to the AI through those devices, and it's going to be picking up on what's going on around you. You're just going to have a co-pilot with you the whole time. And at the moment, in the phone is perfectly fine, right? I can just open the ChatGPT app. I can click go, and I have the whole model ready for me to converse with, which is really, really powerful. That's probably the one I use the absolute most. I'm not too much into I'd call it more like finicky prompts and hacks. I think this is like really more than enough for what I need.
Yeah, I like voice mode a lot as well, but I use the voice input and then I get the written info back because I don't like to wait for the full voice response.
Yeah, I think that there's something in the conversation though, because you can have real conversations with it. It's not just a case of
Right.
question, answer, question, answer. Like, I really like that aspect, and I think how it's developing, because I use it a fair bit, so I notice when things change, and it's coming along very nicely. And I think it's really nice when you have a situation that you might not be able to talk to many people about, maybe because there's no one who really understands the situation, or it's not something a little bit more, I'm not going to say intimate or personal, but just something that you don't want to deal with other people and you just want to kind of deal with it yourself. It's great. And I'm talking mainly about work things, right? For example, maybe research tasks that I don't have time to sit there and write out, and I just need to plan on how to research something. Or when I was developing this game for the first time, I just told it the rules. I was like, hey, look, this is how it's played. This happens, this happens, this happens. And it's a lot faster than me typing out, all right, so when you put down a queen, the next person gets like just let me say it. It takes 3 seconds as opposed to the many
Right.
more that it takes to type it out. And then it will ask questions back like, oh, okay, so when this happens, this what happens after that? And I can just kind of spit through it. And it just gobbles up all the context and we can then work with that information afterwards. It's just so much easier. I think down the line, obviously, there'll be ways where this transcribes into your thoughts and your thought waves as well. Like that's something that I think a lot of people are working towards, is using like electrical pulses to figure out what people are thinking and then transcribing that into, because that's already a thing. There's people who were developing like mice, like computer mice that were governed by what you were thinking about on the screen and stuff like that. So I think that's where it will go. And I think it's a good practice to kind of talk to the AI instead at this point, especially if you're someone who is using AI to maximize productivity. And I mean, I'm a bit scared that people will lose their critical thinking muscle. But if you're there to just like max out productivity, I don't understand why you're not talking to the AI. Like you can be typing and doing other things on your laptop and talking at the same time, and you can get twice as much done realistically. And yeah, okay, it's hard to think about two things at the same time, but if you just consistently switch every second, it's fine. Just trust me, it works.
I'm awful at that.
You
Yeah,
get used to it, I think. I mean, I think I was just doing it in school since I was young because I just didn't want to work. So I'd pretend to listen and then do something else and pretend to listen and do something else for like the whole lesson. So I'm just used to it. But if you put it into practice and you really put the time into like just getting used to talking to it, it frees up a lot of time for your hands and to go and type around something else.
So I know my wife uses voice mode for kind of more personal conversations, almost like a diary where that talks back. And I think she finds it really useful just to like process if she's got this big wave of emotion about something really tough's coming up for her. Do you use it like that at all yourself, like personal, just outside of work?
Nah, to be honest, I'm not the best person when it comes to like modeling how to deal with like mental health stuff on. Not that I'm like bad, my brain. I just like, I'm very good at just compartmentalizing and just moving on and dealing with it. So I don't think I
Gotcha.
need it for that. It's
Yeah, yeah.
more for if I need to maybe, I don't want to say outsource brains or outsource computational
Right.
power, but more so like, okay, I've got a problem and I've thought about it and I don't know how else to think about it. Let me see if ChatGPT can offer a different perspective or extrapolate my thinking into another way, or just provide like another door that I can walk through and then I can go down that path. That's kind of how I see it. Because at the end of the day, again, if we're talking about reasoning and wisdom, there's many ways to think about things. And ultimately, the models have been trained on so much data that they should have different ways of thinking about different problems. And so I think it's beneficial to see how they think about things. And if there's anything that you can learn from their way of thinking about it, because I only know one way to think about things, and that's the way that I think about things. And it could be, and it sounds like actually kind of stupid when I say it out loud, like the way that anyone thinks about anything could be a mix of loads of different things, but you don't know what you don't know. And if you can get another perspective that might fill that gap or maybe color in another part of the picture for you, I think it's useful to have that information. And that's basically why I would use it.
Interesting. I should really try it more because I think I got a little impatient with it and I just like to kind of have my answers brewing in the background while I'm doing other things, but I think I would like to give it another go. One
I
thing I've
think,
held off from that I've been scared about is using it with my children, who they're 2.5 years old, twins. And I was like really thinking sometimes like it'd be interesting to try them on this to be able to just talk to an AI. But I don't know if I think this is a good age yet for it. I mean, they don't use much technology otherwise. Like they watch a few kids shows here and there, but I'm like, what if they could just ask questions? What if when they're really talkative, I was just like, here's ChatGPT. But I don't know
it's
when I'm gonna
dangerous.
start.
I think that's like, there's one-way doors and there's two-way doors. I think that is definitely a one-way door. Like, oh man, I think that's like my biggest fear is that I don't want to instigate behavior, whether it's my future kids or my friends or people I work with. Like, I'm all for using AI. Don't get me wrong. Like, we're doing this for a reason, right? But
Yeah.
I'm very conscious that if you rely on it too much, there is a level of degradation of your mental capacity that happens. And this is not a case of theory. Like, we've seen it in other aspects of technology where you have attention spans have shrunk so much in the last 10 years because of
Definitely.
instant gratification through content, doom scrolling, and we're all like victims of it. Even my dad, I remember when I was like 12, I got my first BlackBerry, and he was like, "This phone is gonna ruin your life." And then I caught him last week sitting on the sofa, like scrolling through TikTok, and I'm like, "That phone is gonna ruin your life." Like, we're in full flat commitment. But yeah, I think, look, I think there's a time and a place for it. I think like children are so impressionable that you don't want to let them feel that the world is at their fingertips. Even though I'm a big advocate of you can
Yeah.
do whatever you want, but there's a difference between that ideology of, okay, I can do whatever I want and I can become whoever I want to become, and then literally being so impatient that if you can't wait 3 seconds for an answer, you have a tantrum. And that could be a very real world. And I think people will then have skewed perceptions of reality and be just so far removed from that. And I know, as both of us who've grown up in Dubai, we've seen that already firsthand, what it's like growing up in a place where everything is basically on a plate for you.
Yeah.
And oof,
Yeah, we try
dangerous.
to insulate them from that growing up in Dubai. But
Dangerous.
I mean, if anything, it almost reaches a boiling point, and we're like, let's go take a long trip to another country where that's not the case. But
Yeah, I recommend Kazakhstan. They have really nice horses
great,
and very little internet.
great. Yeah. All right, we'll check it out. I've been meaning to go.
Awesome.
Um, yeah. So, actually, one last thing I wanted to touch on, and this is again just like a productivity feature set that I love with ChatGPT, and this is projects and docs, and to some extent secret chats. But one thing that I find I love to be able to use is the project's feature to have a long running theme that I want extra context or instructions shared within. So, right now, for example, for me, I have one for my main job, one for this podcast, one for meal planning and recipes. And I have, I think, 5 or 6 projects in my chat GPT. And so that way, every time I've got something like I actually have to do meal planning for the next couple of days right now, I need to come up with recipes, I can jump right in and start a chat that just says something like, I need the next 3 days. And just those words alone, because it's in that project with all of that context around it, it knows exactly what I mean. And it'll come back with some questions like, great, like, do you want to go this direction, that direction? Here are some ideas. Let me know if you want me to expand. I'm like, yes, please, that direction, let's go. And so projects let me be very, even more terse in my prompt because it already knows exactly what this is about. So after we finish this episode, I will take the audio, start a new chat, tell it to transcribe it, get the show notes, get any links mentioned. And I don't actually have to say any of those things anymore. Now all I say is process this episode. And because I've done that multiple times in the same project, it knows, okay, this is for media and user. This is how they want the transcript cleaned up. This is how they want the show notes prepared, and all of these things. So it's a really nice feature for a long running theme of work or otherwise in your life. And within that, the docs feature is something that I actually love so much that I've put it in my custom instructions that whenever appropriate, let's say draft me an email, write me this proposal, create a recipe, meal plan, whatever it is, that instead of giving it to me back in the chat, which the problem with that for me is that if we have to go through multiple revisions, now that chat blows up and the same doc can be repeated multiple times. It's hard for me to figure out like, oh, there was this one line from the first version that I liked, but then there's like the last version. Here's this part, and I need to kind of put them together. I need to maybe manually edit a few of these things. So the docs feature, if you haven't seen it before, it will automatically do it here and there, but I like to kind of specifically ask for it more. Let's say, write me the meal plan for this week. It'll open a doc right of the chat. And so I'm chatting about the document, which is this live document that's being edited as we go. And so maybe it'll section it out. It'll put some tables, Monday, recipes, breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc. Then I can say, okay, just edit the Friday night dinner to be more like, I want it to be tacos instead of enchiladas. And it can just rewrite that one line in the doc. And then I can come in, I can make any manual changes. So really useful feature. I love to specifically ask for it whenever possible. And unless I know that the thing I'm prompting for is going to be like one time and done, if I know I'm going to need revisions, I always use this feature. It helps a lot to stay organized.
Yeah, I never used that. I should probably do that a bit more. If you have any example chats, I think
Oh,
you can
yeah.
share me the link. I think that would be good to see how the structure is. Because recently
Sure.
I've been using the doc feature, and I know what you're talking about. It's like a kind of like a editable page, and then you have the chat there. But sometimes
Yeah.
I ask for the doc, and it gives me the code snippet, and I'm like, please no, I don't know why you're giving me the code. Like I'm not writing code. Uh, Yeah, but I think what's happening now is now that the base product of ChatGPT is at a state where it's good enough, they're like expanding now just into more additional features, and I
Yeah.
think it's a great thing. One thing that I think they launched early but probably didn't push too much was the GPT store. So when people create their own GPTs and like they have a way for people to discover them and build distribution for other people, I think they'll probably put some more focus back into that. I know in crypto we're seeing a fair few um, I say a fair few. I think one or two companies focusing on this model where it's people create AI agents, which are basically they could be applications, they could be just custom instructions that people want to use, and they provide them a way to monetize and distribute those products so people can use them. I think this will be a way to go. Like realistically, prompts will be the new apps to some degree. Maybe not full scale apps. If you're going to have, again, a meal planning app, screw that. You're going to have a meal planning prompt. And that's all you need. And it's just going to be a chat that you keep up with, like exactly how you do now.
Yeah.
You don't need a fancy interface. Just ChatGPT is good enough. And you know, even in ChatGPT, you get tables and you get diagrams and you get different formats. And they're just making it more convenient for you to access the information that you need in a format that you like. And it helps you consume more of their content. So I think that's how that'll be how it goes, and I think it's a great way to elevate your current ChatGPT experience even now.
It's so hard to go back to the old way of working, having experienced all of this. I think especially the multi-format way of working, assuming that any format can be translated into any other just by asking. I got so used to that that now when I need to like take a CSV and make an Excel and then make a chart and process it into a spreadsheet, and I'm like, damn, I have to do so much clicking now to just do this? Like, are you serious? And like, because Excel, for example, we use Excel at work, but the Copilot in Microsoft Office doesn't actually edit the document for you. It only chats about the document. And I'm like, that what use is that to me? Like, I want you to go do the thing I'm trying to say.
What you got to convert it? Free Excel at 3 CSV converter online. Click through 3 ads. Click
Yeah.
download, upload again. Like, dude. I mean, I even did it the other day for like a PDF. I mean, I was trying to get an Adobe Illustrator file to a Figma file. There's not even a way to do that, and I was like, "What the hell do I do now?" Right? Just need someone to do it for me. I need AI to do it for me or something. Um, but yeah, I think this is the way, right? Like it is very hard, and I'm just actually waiting for AI to hit my Google Sheets because I just need to ask the Google Sheet, hey, look, I need this formula that gives me this output. Please just make it for me. I don't know why this hasn't been done yet. And if it has been done, I don't know why I haven't heard about it because I need to be put on really fast.
But there are a few I've heard, like AI spreadsheet new products. They exist. I think they're just early.
Yeah, because I'm just surprised. Like, there's so many formulas out there that, and some of them are really like non-obvious scripts, right? It's like very, very weird manipulation of cells. And all I want to do is, hey, look, here's my data. In this column, I want this output. Just get it done. That's what I need, right? And then go from there. But I think we've gone through a lot of very, very interesting, slightly more obvious to a lot more non-obvious ways to use ChatGPT and to help people elevate their experience and really get more out of the platform than they otherwise might have. So I think this is a good place to end this episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many features we mentioned today. So if that is a little overwhelming, I'd say, start with the obvious ones, the great ones, like just voice mode, custom instructions. So if anyone's interested in my custom instructions, I'll put them in the show notes. You can copy them, use them as a starting point for your own, and see how that changes things for you. There's a lot more features that we haven't even mentioned today, so we'll also put a few of those in the show notes. Things like image generation, diagrams, custom GPTs, and secret chats. So we'll put a little bit more there for you, but really encourage you to get deeper into the set of features available to you in ChatGPT and try that way of just embedding it into your life a little more. And I think pretty soon you'd be finding that you can't live without it in a good way.
Yeah. You hope. And just remember, it doesn't work time, just threaten the model, and we'll see you in the next one.